and welcome back to the Imagia AI for Finance podcast. I'm your host, Brian Chappell, Imagia's Director of Content Strategy. We're here with a very special guest today. We have from Adaptive SAG, we have Robert Godzewski. He is the Executive Business Director at the firm. They're based in Poland. Robert comes with over 20 years of experience in business service transformation, a real expert in navigating organizations through the big tough transition projects, especially those that are technology based. He is currently managing the overall consulting operations while also developing innovative automation as a service solutions tailored to clients' unique needs. We do have a bit of a partnership with Adaptive since 2025, so already quite enamored with their capabilities, and they're helping us out quite a bit in the European market. I guess why don't we just start off with a little bit of an intro? Tell us a little bit about your journey and Adaptive SAG's journey in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. So let's say we started our journey almost 11 years ago. So it was 2015, where our CEO and CFO, they decided to move out of the really big, we could say, BPO organization from the corporate world and establish Adaptive. So we could say it was established by just only 2 people, whereas currently we are almost 100. And within that, amount of time, we already supported more than 100 clients with more than 400 projects being delivered. And in fact, let's say what you already started to mention a bit, but I would say that what we are doing in Adaptive is we are supporting GBS and shared services organizations in the whole life cycle of this kind of organization. Yeah. So from the very beginning of how to set it up, what should be centralized, from the strategy perspective, how the transformation should look like. Then we take it through the tactical point of view of, transitions, transformations, change management, which is very important in this kind of big transformational projects, down to the level of operational support of making sure that, KPI frameworks are there, they are properly integrated with the systems, and also there is a respective piece for the automations in place, which is also what's mentioned currently, something what I'm developing as one of our product portfolio streams.
Okay, excellent. So, well, let's jump in on some questions here. So, of course, Adaptive SAG works extensively with global business services organizations that are undergoing transformation, as we noted. So, how do you see generative AI, agentic AI, autonomous finance, developments in general, reshaping the structure and operating model of GBS organizations, particularly within order to cash operations?
So in the GBS space, at least what I'm observing and discussing with colleagues and peer, we could say, heads of the shared service organizations, I see that in general, they are still struggling from the perspective of making sure that they are able to find a respective use case internally, how to have the Gen AI implemented, whether it will really bring them the value. So what in general we are, at least from my perspective, trying to discuss with them is that look at this from the long run perspective. So, you might be thinking about having the Gen AI and anything what is AI related implemented right now, but this is something what will not omit us, will not omit any one of us, and this will be simply the future of everyone in the finance space and not only. So any kind of movements in that direction will bring respective value sooner or later. But the question is, let's say, how do you convince your stakeholders that you can do right now, this investment where a lot of stakeholders would expect to have the return on investment, ideally without the investment, right? And this is where the tricky part kicks in. So simply, how to find respective, business case and on having, let's say, respective Gen AI being implemented in the GBS space to be represented from the perspective, let's make sure and look from the perspective, how do we pay off the investment from the productivity gains, which, let's say, the implementation of the generative AI will give to us. And this is something what, as I mentioned in the very beginning, some of the guys are still um, struggling on how to exactly, we could say, find those use cases or how to present them respectively to their senior stakeholders. And from
Okay.
your perspective, how would you, let's say, observe this? Do you have some similar, we could say, point of views or feedbacks, or how with your clients does it look like?
No, I mean, I would say we're seeing a lot of, similar kind of things. And, for us, a lot of it has to do with, kind of looking at, what kind of, structural changes might be needed before they even
Mm-hmm.
get started. Things like roadmaps and whatnot, things like upskilling and buy-in, it's like I like to say, a lot of this stuff isn't necessarily a silver bullet, as they say, that's going to solve all the problems of a
Exactly.
business. But it is a great tool if you do the other correct things to put this tool into play. So I feel like a lot of that managing expectation is a part of what we all have to do as well in this industry and just in the conversation about AI. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
I think that, yeah.
oh no, go ahead, please.
I think that you touched on quite an important topic related to, you know, it's not always the matter, and the same we could observe in any kind of, continuous improvement, that it's not always the case of looking for top-down initiatives being driven by the organization, but to look from the perspective of all the people which you are having internally, upskill them respectively, teach them how they should collaborate with AI, and then allow them to use different tools, find their way of working, use those tools like you are currently having in Imagia, which, as far as I understand, it already has some AI embedded, and see what kind of, we could say, improvements and then solutions they can bring into the process, knowing how to cope with it and how to work with it. Because working with those language models and AI, which is currently being designed, is not always so easy part. And it's really good to make sure that you first train your people on all the aspects, make sure that they are having proper understanding how to move around, how to collaborate with AI, how to make sure that it will not hallucinate, how to prompt, how to, we could say, discuss and work out the things with AI, and then they will be able to bring the respective value to the organization, either with, let's say, the tools like Imagia in O2C space, or we could say some development of usage of the standard language models.
This isn't easy. This takes a lot of thought. This takes a lot of
Mm.
resources. This takes a lot of thinking, and whether or not things are worth the effort. So that kind of leads me into thinking, many organizations, they've already invested heavily in things like RPA, workflow tools, whatnot. What do you think differentiates generative AI and agentic AI and the like from these, sort of more established automation tools that sort of make it worth it to pursue?
So I think that, and this is something what we are, for example, sharing this knowledge during our AI trainings with the people in GBS and shared services organizations, that, like you mentioned, AI is not some kind of, golden solution which will right now be brought to the organization and it will solve all the problems. But you need to come up with the way of working and approach how to use it respectively. And simply, my point of view is that AI and language models are good from the perspective of being your assistant and being your, we could say, coach, mentor, or your tool to work out the solutions, which then will enable you to have respective automations in place. Um, that's why, I believe that this is rather a hybrid, which will be implemented in many of the organizations in the way that people will be using AI, but mainly it should work in such way that you will bring, let's say, the AI solutions towards the deterministic solutions like RPAs. So the fact that we had RPAs in the past doesn't mean that they will vanish right now. But we should use AI to manage those RPAs in a much better manner and to have, let's say, even higher productivity. Because with the AI, we will be able to take a lot of unstructured data, which we had till now, to the structured data, which then RPA will be able to handle. I'm not sure that, for example, you know this or you heard about this. There is an analysis which says that around 10 to 14% of the data in the organization is structured, like your ERP system, any kind of tables, Excel files, and so on. But that means that around 85% of the information is still unstructured, or the emails, or the
Wow.
Teams meetings, and this kind of information. And this is the place where AI should kick in. And out of all those unstructured data, structureize it respectively, that then later on with the usage of the RPA, you will be able to automate it respectively and bring respective solutions to the picture and to have, we could say, respective efficiencies and productivity gains. So still quite a lot of, we could say, area where we should be looking into to explore it and then, yeah, look for the use cases, how to enable the AI into our GBS world.
Okay, so from your experience with all this and what you're seeing in the market and maybe what you've seen from other transformative times, what do you think is or will be the biggest barrier in adopting the AI, specifically in shared services and GBS operations, especially for those in order to cash? Is it the technology itself? Is it the processes? Is it the people? Where's the biggest kind of concern and area where you really need to focus on getting that barrier broken down?
So I think that technology with usage of the language models and AI is totally not a barrier anymore. So, for example, it will be much easier from the adoption perspective with, for example, in the organization, Imagia will be implemented. The guys are going to get the tool, and it will be much easier for them with their AI companion to find out how they move around, we could say, the Imagia. That they will not have to spend hours on, for example, going through the trainings and learnings, what they can do, how they can do this, because they can simply have an AI companion who will guide them. You can click there, you can do this, you can prompt in such way, and simply then make sure that you are having much more effective collections. So technology, I believe that this is not the barrier. Rather, the barrier from the adoption perspective is still that organizations do not have a clear picture and understanding how to have the AI implemented in their space, that they do not know which AI tools they can implement, which they can use. There are a lot of discussions between the IT on the cybersecurity space, how to make sure that this is being properly secured, that, data is not flying around through the whole internet, but is properly secured just only on the servers of particular organization. And then this creates a situation that, for example, organizations are giving the tools to the people. Here, you have a tool, you have an AI, use it. But then it appears that on the other hand side, they are coming with, but do not use it in that way, do not use it in this way, and do not use it in another way, and people are lost. Yeah. So they are having a tool which they are told, please use it, and then, but don't use it. So this creates a difficult situation for them because it demotivates, and then this creates, we could say, this barrier in the proper adoption of the AI tools. If, let's say, there is not a proper guidance and strategy from the organization, what and how exactly in particular company employees can do, and what they can, for example, achieve.
So preparing your teams in advance and really kind of having an idea of like the rules for the road and sort of a collaborative conversation with the people using this up front is seems like it's a paramount importance for the success of such a initiative.
Exactly. So currently, people are having a lot of ideas what they might do with AI. They are having like a lot of thoughts, problems which they would like to solve, and then they are meeting, let's say, the barrier that with the current way of the solution of the AI which is being implemented and introduced in the organization, it doesn't allow them to do so in such way. And they are not able, to move around and find any other solution as they are meeting simply some kind of technical or IT roadblocks, not from the availability or understanding of the technology perspective, but simply from the perspective of what is being allowed by the IT team or not, or by the organization. So this is something what's, yes, a lot of organizations are jumping into AI. Let's try it. Let's see what we can do around it. But then they are having a lot of frames, roadblocks, which are stopping all the, we could say, incentives and those ideas coming from bottom-up perspective from the people. But let's see how will the organizations find their solutions around it. I think that it's not so. The AI space is changing so fast. It's really difficult to cope with how fast, let's say, the things are being developed and introduced. We could say every week we have something new coming up. Yeah. Either this is, let's say, I know recently it was Gemini's Nano Banana 2, or you are having in the very, very beginning of February, there was, this Claude Opus, and 2 weeks later, Claude Sonnet models, which are very, good and efficient, or something and new came up recently also from ChatGPT on the codex part. But simply, let's say, monitoring all those stuff is not so easy to follow on them, verifying what they can do, what they cannot, and then how can you utilize them within your organization.
Yeah, and I think demystifying things is anytime we could do that, anybody that's out in the space, that's a good thing, and sort of cutting through hype is a good thing as well for people, actionable information rather than just broad, statements about what's possible. So with that said, one of these hype words or buzzwords we hear is, predictive, how this moves from reactive to predictive when talking about autonomous models. Yeah. When we're talking about large enterprises, particularly, what does predictive mean to you as far as how they're able to like use this to make their businesses better and their operations more efficient?
So from that area, it will be more based on the machine learning and deep learning space than this what we currently would see as language models. So I think that this is the part of the AI which will move more towards, let's say, the predictive topics. Still, not to say coming back a bit to the roots of the AI, which we know in the current shape. But with a proper, machine learning and analysis, then you will be able to predict in a better way what's going to happen and how does it look like. Our current, we could say, solutions of the language models, those are, we could say, solutions which are working more on predictions, more from the perspective of probabilistic approach. They are not deterministic, but they are more probabilistic. What was the probability of some kind of few word sentences coming up into the picture? Yeah. So if organizations are looking into having a better, outcome out of the analysis of their finances, or I believe like also with Imagia tool, with GIA, that you would be looking into your customers and the product portfolio, what is the behavior, whether they will pay or not, or what is the payment behavior, then you need to have a good analysis of your current, we could say, product portfolio, and to have a really good machine learning and deep learning, we could say, piece being put into that area and that space to ensure that you can achieve respective efficiency gains and productivity gains for your O2C team. Yeah. Because then if they will have upfront understanding of what is the payment behavior of the client on the basis of the technical analysis and this kind of, deep learning and machine learning, it will be easier for them to quicker chase those guys who are not paying so well, and to keep a better, we could say, relations with those, for example, who are paying quite well, to make sure that you keep them engaged as your clients, you keep them close, so you will not lose them, and simply support the business in the whole sales strategy and sales approach. So this is how I would see this from the perspective of moving towards this, predictive approach, not exactly so focusing on the current language models being available, but rather still use the language model to support you to build the solution, or have, let's say, already a solution from Imagia, which I believe you have already in place, this kind of analysis of the clients.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Great stuff. So one final question. This is a kind of a fun one I like to do. It gives you a chance to sort of look into the future, and be predictive, yourself here. So I'm thinking, looking ahead 5 years, beginning of next decade. When we get there, do you believe generative AI and agentic AI agents will have fundamentally changed shared services and GBS teams, and how they're staffed, how they're structured, how they operate, and just in general, what do you think the operating model looks like in that future?
Predominantly, I believe that already right now we can see, and this is something what will be in the future for sure, that software without AI will be simply perceived as not working. And that's it. Something what is broken, not usable. Yeah, I cannot use this. It doesn't have an AI. It doesn't give me the respective features which I should have. So this is one thing. Second one is that you and all the GBS organizations will totally need to focus on making sure that their teams are either upskilled from the usage of AI perspective, or they are having themselves a bit shifted more towards being tech savvy and simply more cooperate with the technology to improve on this what they are doing. So I believe that we simply all need to make sure that we know how to collaborate with AI, how to work with it, how to use it to bring into the picture this what AI can give us. And this will be only possible if we'll simply learn by doing. So it's not the case that somebody will come and will do something, for you instead of you. And this whole approach and knowledge you will currently totally apply. You need to check, you need to test, you need to experiment. Simply, only with the learning by doing, you will find out how you can cooperate with AI and how you can build and other solutions from the agenting perspective on all the agents which you need to have in the organization. But then this brings us to the point that rather going into really longer area of the time, simply people most probably will be managing set of the teams where the team is consisting out of agents and RPA robots, and that's it. So this is something what also with my colleagues we were recently discussing, that even if you are a GBS manager and GBS team leader, you should think from the perspective of treating this as another team member in your team, that you also need to train it, we could say respectively, or update with the knowledge of the company and organization. It will not know it by itself. You need to verify whether the outcome of this, what AI is doing, is having a respective and expected results, like your team members. So we could say trust and control to some of the, we could say, point of view. So simply have your AI companion, have your agents, but still somebody will need to manage them and verify whether they are providing the results which are expected to be provided.
Okay, great. Those are all amazing and helpful insights. I'm sure our listeners are more than happy to have those going forward. We'll have to do this again in the near future. Continue to lean on your expertise there. So thank you very much for joining us for this episode, and thank you all viewers and listeners at home for taking time out of your day and having interest in this, really critical topic at what is a really revolutionary time in the industry. So we always are excited to have that conversation with everybody who's interested. We'll be back with another episode here in about 2 weeks and continue exploring autonomous finance and AI-powered solutions for order to cash and beyond. Thank you again. My name is Brian Chappell, and appreciate you joining us today on the Magia
Thank you
AI
very
for
much.
Finance podcast.